The Everest disaster is a series of tragic events that occurred on May 10th and 11th, 1996, when a sudden blizzard struck and left 8 climbers stranded, and ultimately dead on the high slopes of Everest. This event remains one of the deadliest in mountaineering history. What made the 1996 disaster so notable was not just the number of lives lost, but also the harsh weather, poor decisions made under pressure, delays, and the presence of less experienced climbers. These elements combined to create a tragic event on the world's highest peak that is still remembered today. Mount Everest, the tallest mountain in the world at 8,848 meters, attracts many adventurers and climbers. Its high altitude, tough weather, and dangerous paths make it a huge challenge, even for the best climbers. But the dream of standing on top of the world makes many try, and it often ends with deadly results. One big reason for many of these tragedies is the over-commercialization of Everest. Too many climbers try to reach the summit at the same time because Everest climbing has become a big money-making business. By 1996, it cost between $30,000 to $65,000 per person for companies to guide climbers to the top. These companies claim to have the best teams to help even amateur climbers reach the summit. The more climbers they take, the more money they make. They try to make it look easy, so more people want to climb. But climbing Everest is not easy and can be very dangerous, especially above 8,000 meters. This misunderstanding was a major factor in the 1996 disaster. In May 1996, several expeditions set out to climb Everest, each with their own teams and goals. 2 of the most well-known groups were led by experienced climbers Rob Hall and Scott Fisher. Rob Hall's group, Adventure Consultants, included climbers like Mike Groom and Andy Harris. They had 8 clients and 7 Sherpas supporting them. On the other hand, Scott Fisher's group, Mountain Madness, had guides Anatoly Bukriv and Neil Beidelman, along with 7 clients and 8 Sherpas. The Sherpas, native to Nepal's mountains, were very experienced climbers and crucial for the safety and success of the expeditions. Other expeditions included the Indo-Tibetan Border Police, a team of 6 trying to summit from the north side, and a 5-member Taiwanese team led by Gao Ming-ho. Before the climb started, it's worth noting that there were famous people like mountaineer Sandy Hill Pittman with Scott Fisher's group and journalist John Krakauer with Rob Hall's group. This led to some tension and rivalry between Hall and Fisher as they both wanted to reach the top at any cost, a mindset that later turned out to be deadly. Before attempting to reach the summit, climbers spent about 4 to 8 weeks getting used to the high altitude. They moved between different camps on the mountain, climbing to higher points and then returning to lower camps to rest. This process helped their bodies adjust to the harsh conditions, which is a crucial part of the Everest expedition. During this time, climbers made their way up the mountain, passing through several camps, Camp 1, Camp 2, and Camp 3. But on May 9th, the day they were supposed to reach Camp 4, something tragic happened. Chen Yunan, a climber from the Taiwan group, made a fatal mistake. He stepped out of his tent without wearing his boots to relieve himself. He lost his footing and slipped into a crevasse on the western side of the mountain. Although Sherpas quickly rescued him, he later died from internal injuries caused by the fall. Chen Yunan was the first casualty in a series of tragic events that would unfold on Everest in 1996. The other climbers didn't realize it yet, but this incident marked the beginning of a disastrous expedition season on Everest that spring. In the early morning of May 10th, the expedition started their climb from Camp 4 to reach the summit. The leaders had decided that everyone should start descending from the summit by 2 p.m. for safety. To stick to this plan, each group leader told one Sherpa to go ahead and set up ropes at 2 key points, the balcony at 8,350 meters and the Hillary Step at 8,760 meters. When the climbers reached the balcony, they found out that the ropes were not set up. This delay cost them an hour in the dangerous death zone above 8,000 meters. At the Hillary Step, the climbers again discovered that no ropes had been placed, causing another hour-long wait as the guides set up the ropes. The Sherpas responsible were Lopsang Jangbu from Mountain Madness and Ang Dorji from Adventure Consultants. Their failure to set the ropes on time cost the climbers 2 hours of their oxygen supply. No one knows why they didn't set the ropes as planned. With over 30 climbers trying to summit on the same day, there was a bottleneck at the single fixed line at the Hillary Step. Three men from Rob Hall's team, Stuart Hutchison, Luca Sischke, and John Taskey, decided to turn back to Camp 4 because they were worried about their oxygen supply. This decision ultimately saved their lives as they avoided the deadly events that their fellow climbers would soon face. Anatoly Bukreev, a guide with the Mountain Madness team, was the first to reach the summit of Everest at 1:07 p.m. without using extra oxygen. Most climbers reached the summit by 2:30 p.m., which was 30 minutes past the safe time to turn back to Camp 4 before nightfall. Around 3 p.m., snowfall began and daylight started fading, prompting climbers to descend. On the way down, Ang Dorji found client Doug Hansen near the Hillary Step and instructed him to go down. Hansen didn't speak but shook his head and pointed towards the summit, indicating his determination. Hansen had also tried and failed the year before, so he wasn't giving up easily this time. When Rob Hall arrived at the scene, knowing Hansen's determination, he sent Sherpas to help other clients and personally helped Hansen towards the summit. At around 3:30 p.m., the weather turned harsh with strong storms. Scott Fischer hadn't reached the summit until 3:45 p.m. He was exhausted from the ascent and becoming increasingly ill, possibly suffering from high-altitude pulmonary edema, high-altitude cerebral edema, or a combination of both. Others, like Doug Hansen and Gao, reached the summit even later. Rob Hall and Scott Fischer made a big mistake by not turning back at their safe time of 2 p.m. Anatoly Bukreev, the first to reach the summit, was also the first to return to Camp 4. It's unclear why, as a guide, he chose to descend before his clients. The worsening weather began causing difficulties for the descending team members. The blizzard on the southwest face of Everest was reducing visibility, burying the fixed ropes, and obliterating the trail back to Camp 4 that the teams had broken on their ascent. Fischer, with help from his Sherpa Lopsang Jangbu, couldn't descend below the balcony at 8,350 meters in the storm. Eventually, the Sherpas left Gao Ming Ho at 8,230 meters with Fischer, so the two could move down slowly together, while the Sherpas went ahead to assist other climbers. On the other hand, Rob Hall and Doug Hansen were stuck at the top of Everest. Rob refused to leave Hansen behind when he couldn't bring him down. So Hall radioed for help, saying that Hansen had fallen unconscious but was still alive. At 5:30 p.m., Andy Harris, a guide from Adventure Consultants, heard the call. He took extra oxygen and water and started climbing alone from the south summit at 8,749 meters towards Hall and Hansen at the top of Hillary Step. Unfortunately, he got lost on the way and was never seen again. Meanwhile, a fierce blizzard hit, with snow whipping at 70 miles per hour winds, blinding the climbers. Several climbers got lost on the South Col during the storm. Among them were Mountain Madness guide Beidelman and clients Schoening, Fox, Madsen, Pittman, and Gamelgard, along with Adventure Consultants guide Mike Groom and clients Beck Weathers and Yasuko Namba. They wandered in the storm until they couldn't walk anymore. Around midnight, when the blizzard eased slightly, Bukreev searched for Pittman, Fox, and Madsen, members from his Mountain Madness group. They were prioritized over Namba, who was from Adventure Consultants and was very close to death. Beck Weathers was also missing. All the climbers then at Camp 4 were exhausted and couldn't reach out for Namba and Weathers. In the early morning of May 11th, at 4:43 a.m., Rob Hall radioed base camp from the south summit of Mount Everest, confirming he survived the night at 8,749 meters. He said Doug Hansen, who had been with him since the day before, was gone, and Andy Harris was also missing. Rob Hall's frostbitten hands and feet made it hard to traverse the ropes. Later that afternoon, he asked base camp to call his pregnant wife, Jan Arnold, on a satellite phone. They chose a name for their unborn child, and he reassured her, "Sleep well, my sweetheart. Please don't worry too much." Sadly, he froze to death in his sleep soon after. 12 days later, on May 23rd, Ed Viesturs and others found Hall's frozen body while filming an IMAX movie on Everest. Hall's wife asked them to leave him there, saying it's where he would have wanted to stay. Meanwhile, Stuart Hutchison, another climber on Hall's team who had turned back before the summit on May 10th, later organized a search for Beck Weathers and Yasuko Namba. He found them alive but severely frostbitten and unable to move. Sadly, the rescue team had to leave them behind, as they couldn't be saved at such a high altitude and in such poor conditions. Later that day, something remarkable happened during the expedition. Beck Weathers regained consciousness and managed to walk back to camp on his own, despite severe hypothermia and frostbite. A daring helicopter rescue, one of the highest ever attempted, saved him. He survived but lost his nose, right hand, half of his right forearm, and all the fingers on his left hand to frostbite. On May 11th, the climbing Sherpas found Fisher and Gao. Fisher had deteriorated severely, and attempts to save him failed. Gao was still alive and was airlifted to safety. Tragically, the day's events led to 8 deaths. Both expedition leaders Rob Hall and Scott Fisher died on the mountain. Rob Hall's guide, Andy Harris, and 2 clients, Doug Hansen and Yasko Namba, also lost their lives. Fisher was the only casualty from the Mountain Madness team. On the other side of the mountain, all 3 members of the Indo-Tibetan team that made the summit push perished in a blizzard at around 8,600 meters. One member of this team, known as Green Boots, became famous as his body marked a landmark on the route. You can watch a video about Green Boots and his story by clicking the link in the top right corner of your screen. So what went so horribly wrong on Mount Everest in May 1996? Firstly, both expedition leaders didn't show effective leadership. They didn't anticipate the severe blizzard that struck on May 11th, despite increasing snowfall the day before. Also, there was a competitive rivalry between Hall and Fisher. They were both focused on getting their clients to the summit, which caused them to ignore the weather forecasts. Then, delays at the balcony and Hillary Step added nearly 2 hours to climbers' summit attempts. This was because of slow progress in setting up ropes and too many climbers arriving at once. On May 10th, 34 climbers were trying to summit together. Another problem was that team leaders allowed climbers to continue past the usual turnaround time of 2 p.m., with some reaching the summit as late as 2:30 p.m. This decision was a big warning sign. 2 climbers, Doug Hansen and Gao Mingho, fell ill near the summit after 3 p.m., which made things worse. Because of these issues, climbers spent more time above 8,000 meters where there's very little oxygen. They used up most of their oxygen tanks, causing oxygen levels to drop. Guides and rescuers had to bring more oxygen to the stranded climbers during a storm. Guide Andy Harris died while trying to help his team leader, Rob Hall, by bringing oxygen and water to him at Hillary Step. Another factor was Anatoly Bukreev, an experienced guide who was the first to reach the summit and quickly returned to Camp 4. Some criticized him for not staying to help his clients down, but Bukreev later justified, saying that he wanted to be ready to assist struggling clients farther down the slope and to retrieve hot tea and extra oxygen if necessary. The events on Everest in May 1996 were unique and incredibly challenging. Many factors combined to create a dangerous situation. Several books have been written about this, including Into Thin Air, The Climb, Left for Dead, and Climbing High. These books share first-hand accounts from survivors of that season. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more content like this in the future. See you next time.